Hello, and thank you for attending this virtual emergency preparedness session. Our goal is to give you accurate information about the hazards we face in the City of Victoria so you can better prepare for them. Sometimes we see emergencies in other cities around the world and expect to see the same situations here, but that's not always the case. We hope you find this presentation helpful and leave here today with tangible steps that you can take to be prepared as possible ahead of an emergency. During this presentation, we're going to discuss what Emergency Management in Victoria is, some of the hazards and damages that we expect to see here within the City of Victoria, how you can prepare for them with different supplies, what your planning or recovery will look like, and then if you have questions, you can email us. Emergency Management Victoria is a division within the Victoria Fire Department. We are responsible for coordinating the 4 phases of emergency management for the City of Victoria, which are mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We also coordinate business continuity planning for the city to identify critical functions, resources, and staff and ensure minimal disruption of city services after an emergency. We educate and empower citizens to be resilient in emergencies. This includes educational workshops such as this, practice exercises with staff and volunteers, and partnerships and collaboration with local organizations and groups, such as neighborhood associations, to prepare people for emergencies. We can present this workshop to any business, organization, or group of neighbors within the City of Victoria and customize it just for you. We have various volunteer teams you can join if you're interested in helping the city before, during, and after a major emergency, but we'll go over those at the end of the presentation. It's important to understand that our region is vulnerable to many types of hazards. This is a list of hazards taken from the City of Victoria Emergency Plan, which can be found on the website. Hazards are categorized by low, moderate, high, taking into account both the likelihood or probability that an event will happen, as well as the impact or severity it will have. For instance, animal disease is a low probability event with a low impact, whereas structure fires are a high probability event with a moderate impact depending on the size, as in not everyone in Victoria will be affected. We aren't having damaging earthquakes every year, but when they do happen, there is going to be a major impact to infrastructure, businesses, and neighborhoods. Some hazards, such as severe weather, can be monitored and you might have a day or two to get ready. However, many hazards leave people with no time to gather even the most basic necessities, which is why planning ahead is so important. This brings us to our section on earthquakes. In Victoria, there is a 1 in 3 probability of a damaging earthquake happening in the next 50 years. If we told you there is a 1 in 3 probability of winning the lottery in the next 50 years, you would probably buy a ticket. Using that same mentality, you should prepare and plan for a damaging earthquake. There are 3 types of earthquakes that can affect our region. Without getting into the science of the differences, they are, first, a shallow crustal earthquake along the Leech River or Devil's Mountain Fault, which lasts between a few seconds or up to a minute of shaking. We often get small versions of this type each year, but it could be as large as a 6 or 7 magnitude. The next is a deep earthquake, which could be an 8.0 off the Strait of Georgia and lasts between a couple seconds or up to 30 seconds of shaking. They are larger in magnitude but deeper and farther away than the shallow crustal. And finally, we have the subduction earthquake, which would be a megathrust earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone. This is the earthquake that people often refer to as the big one. This could be as large as a 9.0 or a 9.1, with shaking lasting between 3 and 5 minutes. The Cascadia subduction zone stretches from northern California to northern Vancouver Island, so a major earthquake would not only affect us, but several other major cities along the coast. It's important to recognize that we are continuously learning new things about earthquake science as new technologies develop that give us more insight into the ground beneath our feet. Aftershocks can happen with the shallow crustal and subduction earthquakes. They are smaller in magnitude than the original earthquake and can last up to months after the initial earthquake. Here's a map of the faults mentioned in the previous slide for a shallow crustal earthquake. The Devil's Mountain Fault Zone is made up of a series of faults that run from Washington State to Victoria and is about 125 kilometers long, which could cause an earthquake potentially in the magnitude of 6.5 to 7.5 if the entire fault zone ruptured at once. The Leech River Fault runs from Sombrio Beach through Royal Roads University and offshore of downtown Victoria, and was long believed to have been inactive for millions of years.
but scientists now believe it is an active fault. New research shows it has ruptured at least 2 times with magnitude 6.5 and 7.0 in the past approximately 12,000 years, which for plate tectonics is relatively recent.
We've been throwing around a few different numbers regarding magnitude, and you've probably heard these when discussing other earthquakes around the world. It is important to note that the Richter scale is logarithmic. This means a magnitude 5 is 10 times larger than a magnitude 4 and 31 times stronger in terms of energy released. A magnitude 9, which isn't even on this scale and is what we said we could expect for the Cascadia subduction zone, is 1,000 times bigger than a magnitude 6 and 31,000 times stronger in terms of energy released. Keep in mind, other factors such as soil type, building type and age, and epicenter location also have a large effect on the impact of an earthquake. The video on the next screen will further clarify the differences in energy released from various earthquakes.
This is a short clip that demonstrates the difference in size of energy released in recent and historic earthquakes. Starting with the green circle representing the 5.8 earthquake of Virginia in 2011, the circles start to get smaller to show the difference in scale to larger events. You will notice that many of these major earthquakes are situated along what is known as the Pacific Ring of Fire. Our region here along Vancouver Island is the only area along the Pacific Ring of Fire to not have a damaging earthquake in the last 100 years. And ending with the 9.5 earthquake in Chile, the largest earthquake in recorded history. You can no longer even see the green circle representing the 5.8 earthquake in Virginia.
As soon as you realize the ground is shaking, you should immediately drop, cover, and hold on. Don't wait to judge the severity of an earthquake or how long the shaking will last. Just react. Most injuries from earthquakes are caused by people falling or objects falling on them, so the faster you can drop, cover underneath a table or desk, the better. We no longer encourage people to stand in doorways for a couple of reasons. One being that they are no more structurally sound than the rest of the building. Also, most doorways have doors in them, and they will swing during the shaking, causing you injury while you try and brace yourself. Do not run out of a building. You are more likely to be injured by falling debris or objects than a building collapsing. Many of the destructive images we see of earthquakes are from countries where the building codes aren't as strict as we have here in Canada, so don't expect the exact same type of building collapse or destruction. The triangle of life is a theory that gets circled online and encourages people to sit or lay beside a table instead of getting under it, arguing that those surfaces will block the wall or debris from falling on you and create a safe triangle of space. Fortunately, you can never predict where these triangles will end up, and we do not endorse this line of thought, and it has been disproven by seismologists and real-life experiences during earthquakes. If you or loved ones use mobility aids, there are a couple of adaptations. It is important to remember that if you need assistance getting up, to not get all the way down to the ground. That is why the walker and wheelchair both start with lock rather than drop. Put the brakes on and get into a brace position, protecting the head and the neck. Similar with using a cane, make sure the cane is accessible so after the shaking has stopped, you can still move around if you are by yourself.
Here are some other alternatives. If you're outside, stay outside and try to get cover away from power lines, windows, and debris that may fall off of nearby buildings. Get into a brace position and protect your head and your neck. If you happen to be driving, safely pull over as soon as possible and stay inside your car. Avoid parking on or under bridges or overpasses. Do not park directly next to buildings and try and stay away from power lines. If one does fall on your car, stay inside your vehicle until a trained professional can get you out. If you're in bed, stay in bed, go onto your stomach, protecting your vital organs, and put your pillow above your head, protecting your head and your neck. And then the same thing with a stadium or a store. Get into that brace position and protect your head and your neck. If you need to get away from something heavy that could fall on you, drop low to the ground and crawl only a short distance. Think about your daily routine and about the types of hazards you might be confronted with. Thinking about how you would react before an incident occurs will help you respond appropriately during that event. Earthquakes will cause things to move and fall. Think about the places you spend the most amount of your time and concentrate on securing these areas. For example, your workplace, bedroom, and living room. Where would you find shelter if you were in one of these places? What could potentially move, fall, or break and become a hazard during or after an earthquake? Here are some examples. There are easy fixes like thinking of placement of the items as well as making sure they are secure. Use earthquake hooks to hang photos, anchor bookcases to wall studs in the wall with metal L brackets, use latches on cabinets so that the doors won't swing open and cause items inside to fly out and hit you. Place lighter items on top shelves and cabinets and heavier items on the bottom. You can purchase straps from the hardware store and strap your hot water in place so it doesn't bounce around during the shaking of an earthquake. Securing some of your belongings and ensuring there aren't things that could fall on you while you were sleeping will go a long way for your safety and recovery after an earthquake. Count to 60 after the shaking has stopped. This will allow a chance for everything to settle and fall down while you are still in a safe spot. Counting out loud will also give you a chance to calm down a little and help you focus so that you're thinking more clearly and hopefully making more rational decisions after this potentially very scary event. Do an assessment. Are you okay? With the high adrenaline and potential shock, you might not realize right away if you have been injured. Do a thorough physical and visual check for any injuries. Can you help anyone around you? Your coworkers and neighbors will be your first responders during a major event. You should know who is around you and who might need extra assistance in an emergency. Be aware of potential new dangers, and there is an entire slide of those coming up to be mindful of as you move around. Evacuate the building if necessary, and take your wallet, coat, bag, etc. with you. If you have a grab-and-go bag, take that as well. Be cautious of aftershocks, and if the ground starts shaking again, remember to drop cover and hold on. Here are a few photos comparing buildings in Victoria to damages to similar buildings after the 2011 earthquake in New Zealand, put together by Health Emergency Management British Columbia. Because of similar building type and age, we can expect to see similar damage to buildings here in Victoria. There will be a lot of broken glass and debris after a major earthquake. We recommend keeping a spare pair of sturdy shoes under your bed with a flashlight so if an earthquake or other emergency happens in the middle of the night, you can move around safely. If you have natural gas in your home, know where the shutoff valves are and only turn it off if you smell or hear a gas leak or if there's a fire nearby. You can turn off your gas yourself, but you need a certified tradesperson to turn it back on, which could take a very long time after a damaging earthquake. This goes for everyday situations. If you see a down power line, assume it is live and stay at least 10 meters away from it, which is about the length of a yellow school bus. Fires are often caused by broken electrical and gas lines and can be difficult to put out due to damaged roads and water lines after an earthquake. Having fire extinguishers and knowing how to use them can help stop small fires before they get too big. And finally, tsunami, which brings us to our section on tsunami. In Victoria, we don't have a siren as the shaking is your tsunami warning. If you feel a very powerful earthquake or a shaking that lasts longer than a minute, you can expect a tsunami. The maximum water level expected is to be 2.5 meter wave moving at 1 meter per second. To put that into perspective, the 2011 tsunami in Japan had a maximum water level recorded of 40-meter waves moving at 12 meters per second, so considerably larger and faster than anything we could expect here in Victoria. Due to the geography of our region, a tsunami won't arrive for at least 75 minutes up to 95 minutes after the shaking stops, so there's plenty of time to walk to higher ground if you are by the water when an earthquake happens. More than 4 meters above sea level or 2 blocks inland is sufficient for the city of Victoria. You do not need to get into your car and you do not need to drive to the top of Mount Doug or Mount Ptolemy. If you're unable to move to higher ground, getting to a higher floor of a building will also keep you safe. A couple of do's and don'ts for tsunamis. Don't be a disaster tourist. This goes for all hazards and emergencies. Do not go towards the danger. Stay away from the beach during a tsunami warning. The last thing first responders and rescue workers need is more people in a potentially dangerous situation. If you're on a boat when a tsunami warning is issued and you can't get to shore and high ground quickly, get to deeper water as tsunamis build in force and intensity as they approach shore due to shallow waters. Remain at high ground until you hear otherwise from emergency officials. Tsunami comes in multiple waves, and it's usually the second or third that can be the biggest. Listen to local radio for updates. Here are the tsunami zones for the rest of the province. As you can see, Victoria's geographic location protects us compared to somewhere like Tofino, which is exposed to the open ocean and is expecting a much different experience with tsunami than we are. If you happen to be along the western coast of Vancouver Island when an earthquake happens or a tsunami warning is issued, recognize that you need to move farther inland and much more quickly than you would if you were here in Victoria. Here is tsunami modeling for Victoria. The brighter turquoise color shows the inundation zone expected for a 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, which is the most likely worst-case scenario for a tsunami in our region. With the tsunami, we will expect to see some flooding in areas of Ross Bay, Ogden Point, and James Bay, along the Inner Harbor, Vic West, and the Gorge area. The reason the City of Victoria doesn't have a siren warning system is because, as you can see, our risk level isn't very high. We do not want a siren causing everyone to think they need to evacuate the city and blocking evacuation routes for the people in these inundation zones who will need to evacuate. We are expecting a slow water rise, which will give us time to take a targeted approach to evacuations. We also plan to have updated modeling with other tsunami scenarios by the fall of 2020, so make sure you check back for any updates. Here is a close-up of some of the inundation areas. You can explore this yourself on VicMap by going to the Emergency Services layer and selecting Tsunami Hazard Line. Make sure to unselect the fire dispatch areas as this covers the entire city and can make the map difficult to read. We are extremely fortunate in Victoria that we don't experience many disasters. One hazard that we do experience more frequently is severe weather events. With climate change, these events are becoming more frequent and more severe. In December of 2018, the windstorm experienced was the most damaging storm and required the largest mobilization of BC Hydro resources than any previous storm. And February 2019 saw the most snow ever recorded in February in Victoria. We want people to take an all-hazard approach to their emergency planning. These severe weather events can result in major power outages, flooding, falling debris, and damages to homes and buildings. Preparing for these types of events will also prepare you for other hazards. Lengthy power outages will affect what you can do and eat, and for some people, even a few hours without power can be detrimental to their health if they rely on medical equipment. Getting around can be difficult or unsafe, including to school, work, the grocery store, or to get medical help. Fallen debris or flooding may damage your home and cause you to evacuate. You can do things like ensuring your outdoor drains are free of leaves and other debris, as well as ensuring there aren't any branches that are close enough to your home to break windows. Climate change is also creating more frequent and severe incidences of droughts, heat waves, wildfire, and air quality issues. These events affect our already vulnerable populations, such as the sick, elderly, people with heart conditions and other diseases, and those on certain types of medications. These things can all disrupt your day-to-day life and may either cause you to evacuate your home quickly or shelter in place for an extended period of time, depending on the event. Having all hazard plans and emergency supplies, which we will go over, can be applied to all sorts of events, not just large-scale events like earthquakes.
It can be a bit daunting to understand the variety and potential severity of even our local hazards. For some, this information will be what you expected, but there may have been some surprises. Maybe you were not aware of the risk of falling debris during an earthquake, or perhaps the local risks associated with tsunamis are not as bad as you thought they might be. It is not our intention to scare anyone with this information, but by better understanding these hazards and their impacts, we can prepare more effectively. The rest of this presentation will focus on these preparedness activities. Most people survive disasters. Following the initial impact, most of us will be okay. And this is really important to consider, not only because it helps us mentally cope with these risks, but because it impresses upon us the need to prepare for the days, weeks, and months which follow a major event. Many definitions of disaster refer to the overwhelming of local capabilities. We must expect and plan to be able to take care of ourselves, because the services we depend on for normal daily functioning may not be available or may be completely overwhelmed by intense demands. During this time, the well-being of you and your loved ones may be entirely dependent on yourself and the preparations you have made. First among these preparations should be a plan to reconnect with your family. You may need to make more than one plan, depending on the different places you may be. For example, my family plan will be very different on Saturday, when most of my family is at home, versus during the week when my wife and I are at work and our children are at school. Think of the places where you spend the most time and work together to develop your plans. If you must leave your home following a disaster, you should wait for official information before proceeding to public locations seeking refuge. The city has identified many potential reception centers. However, which locations to use is not predetermined, as they must each be assessed for safety and suitability following a disaster event. For more information following a disaster, your best source may be your local radio stations. It is not necessary to use a special emergency frequency. Simply tune in to your preferred local station. It will be providing regular emergency updates. It is important to remember that you should not call 911 for information. 911 is for emergencies only. While an earthquake may seem like an emergency situation, you should not call it unless you need immediate medical, fire, or police services, with flashing lights and sirens wailing. 911 is not an information hotline. After making a plan to reconnect with your family, your next step should be to create an emergency supplies kit. Many people will call this an earthquake kit, but we encourage you to consider the many different types of emergencies you may be faced with when building your kits. In addition, we have different kits for different situations. Shelter-in-place kits will be very different from a grab-and-go bag. A shelter-in-place kit contains things you will use when you shelter in your home after a large-scale emergency because it is safe to do so. We live on beautiful Vancouver Island, island being the key term. So while many preparedness materials, including those from the provincial government, recommend creating a 3-day or 72-hour kit, we recommend being prepared for 7 days or more, due to the extra complications involved in getting resources to the island. A grab-and-go bag is meant to be an easily accessible and portable kit that you can grab as you're evacuating your home. This will not have 7 days worth of food and water and other supplies. Imagine a police officer knocks on your door and explains there has been a chemical spill and you need to evacuate now. What are the important things you would want to bring with you? These are the items that would go in a grab-and-go kit and should support you for 24 hours. Think about your needs and what you should have in your car versus your shelter-in-place kit versus your grab-and-go bag. Each should be personalized for you and your family. Here is a breakdown of the types of things that should go into our kits. You can find lists with even more details on the Victoria Ready website. First, we'll look at a shelter-in-place kit. The first item is 7 days worth of food. You'll want non-perishable items, but these do not have to be specialized military-style rations. Those can be great because they have a very long shelf life. However, eating them for 7 days will not be very enjoyable. Non-perishable items, which you already use on a regular basis, will be great choices. Try to use foods which do not require water to be prepared, as water may be in short supply. Pasta is a great dried good, but it does require water to cook. Your kit should also include the tools necessary to prepare your food. A small camp stove is a good idea, but be sure to take proper precautions if you use it indoors. If you use canned food, make sure you have a can opener. We mentioned the radio may be your most reliable source of information, so having a radio in your kit should be a priority. Radios are available with batteries which can be recharged by hand cranking. These often include a flashlight as well as a USB port, which can be used to charge your cell phone or other devices. First aid supplies are important, and you also need to know how to use them. So make the effort to get some first aid training as well. Include extra clothing for various weather conditions. Consider that there may be a lot of messy cleaning up to do, so sturdy shoes and work gloves are also recommended. Have camping equipment as part of your kit. Provides alternative shelter if your home is unsafe to return to. Each of us will need to customize our kit with special or unique items. These could be prescriptions or equipment for people with disabilities. There may be special items for infant and pet needs as well, such as diapers or pet food. You should have copies of important documents, such as insurance paperwork, your passport, and driver's license, medical prescriptions, and, if required, a service animal certificate. You can use paper photocopies or store these documents on a USB stick or in your email or cloud storage. Try to include photos of family members and pets. These are not only a source of comfort, they can also be used if you're trying to track down a loved one that you may have been separated from. Setting aside some cash in small bills is a good idea as well, because utility disruptions may mean your credit and debit cards will not work. Toiletry items will be needed to maintain hygiene, which could be especially challenging if we are cleaning up debris and cooking outside with no running water. Wet wipes and hand sanitizer will help to reduce the chance of developing illnesses. Another quick tip: if you're attending some sort of large event or festival, take a photo of your kids on your phone. This way, if you're separated, you have a current photo, including what they're wearing that same day. Rethink your supplies once a year and ask yourself if your needs have changed. Put a system in place to check the expiry dates on your food and first aid materials, perhaps when you change your clocks in the spring and fall. This is also a good time to check the batteries in your smoke detectors. Purchasing a pre-made kit is great, but look at what's included and determine if those items are useful for your family. Maybe you already have some of them somewhere in your house. Maybe you have certain dietary considerations. No kit is ready to go from a supplier. It will need to be personalized with personal information at a minimum, and perhaps with many other items as well. We cannot survive long without water. The recommendation is 4 liters per person per day for consumption and hygiene needs. Imagine a 4-liter jug of milk. That's what you need for one person each day. For a family of 4, you would need 28 of those jugs for 1 week. Water storage is often seen as a limiting factor. However, you may be surprised how much room you have. Your water does not all need to be stored in the same place. Under the bed or in the back of a closet might be good options. Try not to place water containers directly on concrete floors, because chemicals and minerals can leach through the plastic and cause contamination. Placing a piece of plywood underneath will prevent that. If you can't store water, other options are purification tablets and filter systems. These can make other water sources safe to drink. A Brita doesn't count. It will make unsafe water taste better, but it will still be unsafe. Camp containers with spigots are also a good solution, even if they're empty. Look for something that you will be able to carry, as you may need to walk quite a distance to a water filling station. In short, store as much water as you can. You will use it. If you're storing bottled water, check the best before dates. And if you're filling your own camp containers with tap water, change the water every 3 to 6 months. We are often asked where to purchase supplies and kits. The city does not specifically endorse any stores, but know there are many great local options for these supplies. Most of the items in our kits are things we use every day and can be purchased at the same locations you normally shop. Camping and grocery stores are a great place to begin. Here are some additional quick tips. Maintaining an out-of-town or out-of-province contact person is strongly recommended, as local phone lines will be very busy if they are working at all. When phone lines do work, you might have more luck calling long distance than someone just down the street. This means that family members should check in with someone outside your region, and that person will relay messages and basically become your personal call center. Think about what you want to say before you call and keep these conversations short and to the point. because other people will also be wanting to connect with their loved ones. If you are able to use a cell phone, you are likely to have better luck with text messages than voice calls. A voice call requires both people to have a reliable connection. A text message only requires a brief connection on either end and will go through automatically once that connection is made. Another good tip is to change your voicemail recording to indicate you're safe, so that people who may not be able to connect with you on the phone will still know you are okay. Make sure everyone in your home knows where your emergency supplies are kept, what they include, and how they work. You don't need to make all of your preparations at once. You can break it up and work on different aspects of preparedness. For example, getting your documents ready on a USB drive, or putting together your first aid supplies. Simple things like keeping shoes under your bed to protect your feet from glass if you're running out of your house are also easy to do. Home and renter's insurance is a large topic we can't fully cover in this presentation. The main thing is to make sure you really understand the coverage you have, because not every policy includes earthquake coverage, and even those that do come with very high deductibles. Government assistance is only available for uninsurable losses. It doesn't provide everyone with insurance to cover all losses. Taking half an hour once a year to go over your insurance is time well spent. Know where and how to turn off your utilities. The most common are water, electricity, and natural gas. Often, only one person in the home knows where the water shutoff is located. Make sure you all know where it is, and then test the valve to ensure it is not stuck open from years of not being used. Electrical breakers should be turned off individually before turning off the main breaker. When turning things back on, do the same process in reverse, beginning with the main breaker. Natural gas valves are located outside the house. Remember, you need a certified technician to turn your gas back on, so don't turn these off unless you smell gas, like rotten eggs, or if you hear a hissing sound. If yours or your neighbor's house is on fire, that would also be a good time to turn off the gas. Keep a wrench by your shutoffs so that you don't need to go looking for one when you need it. Much of Victoria's sewer infrastructure was built before the 1940s and is not expected to do well in the event of a damaging earthquake. Following the earthquakes in Christchurch, many neighbors had a porta potty on every block for months afterwards. Imagine what sharing a single porta potty with your block for months would be like. To avoid this, there are a few options. If your toilet is unusable, you can buy lids called luggable loos and a cheap bucket from the hardware store and keep them as part of your kit and use these as a portable toilet. Or if your toilet is still in one piece, you can use black garbage bags to line your toilet and then put the bags in some sort of garbage can outside to prevent a biohazard contamination. After a large-scale emergency, it may take weeks, months, or even longer to recover, depending on the levels of damage. The actions we take today strongly affect how well and how quickly we recover. We often focus on the emergency period itself. However, it is a long period following that can be the most challenging. A large-scale emergency is a huge jolt to a city that can completely change the equilibrium of a community. Do not expect your community and city to go back to exactly the way it was soon after a mass emergency. Damages to built structures are obvious. Less so are the psychological and economic impacts, so be aware of the emotional toll of earthquakes. Just imagine getting your life back together after a major earthquake, and then an aftershock hits and brings you right back to square one. Consider the importance of local businesses after a major event. Many will be unable to reopen quickly, and others will go out of business completely. This means many items we depend on will not be available, and sources of income will be fewer. The most important function a business can perform for its community following a disaster is to reopen. There are many resources available to assist businesses with continuity planning, ensuring they are able to reopen as quickly and as successfully as possible. While Christchurch has, for the most part, returned to a normal daily routine, many people who had to leave have chosen not to return. Psychological impacts will remain for many decades to come. Christchurch was relatively well prepared and is an affluent part of the world. Haiti is an example of an entire nation which was ill prepared and has not even returned to normal daily routines more than a decade following an earthquake. Within each of these places, there are individual levels and stories of preparedness and recovery as well. Research shows us that neighborhoods that are well connected fare much better and recover more quickly than those that do not. Simply getting to know your neighbors can have a huge impact on your disaster recovery. Organizing a block party or a barbecue around the subject of emergency preparedness can be a great way to get the conversation started. We all have a role to play in keeping ourselves and those who rely on us and our neighborhoods healthy and safe. People cope better during a disaster and recover more quickly afterwards when they work together. Neighbors helping neighbors is the principle behind our Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program. It helps neighborhoods identify their skills, assets, and resources that would be useful in a disaster. They can identify any challenges and strategies to overcome them and develop plans together on how they will respond safely and effectively in organized teams. The goal is to prepare neighborhoods to be self-sufficient for at least 7 days after a disaster. A neighborhood can be a group of homes, an apartment or townhouse complex, a school or daycare, a business, or any other place where the same individuals regularly gather. For more information on how to get your neighborhood involved, please contact us. Vic Alert is a public notification service the city uses to notify people of various emergencies that might affect them. You must have either a landline or cell phone to sign up. Landlines will receive a pre-recorded audio message, and cell phone users will get a text message and the audio message. Privacy legislation does not allow us to send you alerts unless you have signed up for them, so we really encourage people to sign up to receive alerts for the neighborhoods that affect them. Vic Alert is different than a provincial Alert Ready system. Alert Ready will take over radio and cellular devices within a defined geographic area with emergency instructions and does not require signing up. Vic Alert is specific to Victoria emergencies and requires you to sign up on our website. Congratulations! Just by coming here today, you are better prepared than you were before. You've accomplished the first step on our list, knowing your risks. Now we want you to take the next step towards greater preparedness. Remember, it's not just earthquakes that you are preparing for, but the potential for any event which disrupts the services we depend on. If you haven't had the chance to get started with your own preparedness, don't despair. Pick one thing you can do to get started and set a schedule for working on your own preparedness. Involve your entire household in making a plan to reconnect and set time aside to work on your kit together. If you are interested in becoming more involved, we offer a number of volunteering options with Victoria Ready. We have 3 different teams you can join. These teams have different requirements and time commitments. However, a common theme is you must be a team player and able to work under pressure and in stressful situations. Auxiliary Communication Services provides backup communications when traditional services are unavailable. They use various radio systems to provide two-way communications in times of disaster. They are completely mobile and provide messaging services to emergency responders and the Emergency Operations Center. The Cyclist Response Team, or CRT, are a fairly new concept in emergency management and response. On bicycles, the team is able to perform damage assessments, provide logistical support between response sites, and act as runners should the need arise. By bicycle, they may be able to travel around the city faster and more reliably than by car or by foot. Emergency Social Services is a provincially funded program delivered by local authorities that is designed to assist people in need of food, shelter, clothing, or well-being after an emergency, providing temporary assistance to those who need it. That way, evacuees can plan their next step towards recovery after a disaster. ESS is our most active volunteer team, assisting people who have to evacuate their homes after fires and floods. Our ESS volunteers recently partnered with the Canadian Red Cross to offer even greater service to our community. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for taking the time to become more prepared for emergencies. Please share this information with your friends, family, and neighbors by talking about preparedness. We are happy to visit your location and offer live presentations to businesses, stratas, or other gatherings. You can contact us if you would like any of our preparedness materials. We look forward to hearing from you.